Welcome. Today we're going to talk about the business value of lean thinking, capitalizing upon lean thinking principles to rapidly create innovative products and services. Feel free to visit my website where you can grab all of my lean thinking videos, briefings, and white papers on how to apply these concepts to complex systems. I've been a U.S. government contractor for nearly 4 decades. My background is in computer science and information systems. I'm a career systems and software engineering methodologist. My first project was NASA's space station. I published the first books on the ROI of traditional as well as agile methods. So let's begin with a rather timely quote by former General George William Casey on lean thinking. He's known to have said clarity and simplicity are the antidotes to complexity and uncertainty, which is certainly a timely application of today's information technology intensive systems. So why exactly is lean thinking important? Well, traditional thinking leads to overscope projects and infinite complexity. As the standard statistics have showed for many years, traditional overscope projects lead to extremely high project failure rates, and globally over half of all information technology intensive investments are lost due to overscope projects that are infinitely complex. Okay, so why do traditional projects that are overscoped and have infinite complexity actually fail so much? Well, studies have shown that over 80% of the requirements are actually defective and over 80% of their features are never used at all. So traditional thinking leads to overscope projects, budgets which are too large, schedules which are too large, too many requirements, big architectures, almost guaranteeing project failure. The relationship between size, complexity, and project performance has been known for decades. As traditional as Capers-Jones showed many decades ago, large project size leads to too many defects. Large projects, too much change, too much turnover. Large projects, a loss in productivity. And large projects actually have an almost certain failure rate. In spite of the mounting scientific evidence against system complexity, we keep on building systems that are more complex decade after decade. Aircraft shown on the left, other types of systems shown on the right. The proponents of traditional project management, systems engineering, software engineering, CMMI, try to convince us that system complexity is actually manageable, which it's not. In this study by Mark Blackburn of the Stevens Institute of Technology, each generation of system becomes 10 times more complex than the previous generation. However, traditional project management, systems engineering, software engineering, CMMI have failed to keep pace, leading to almost certain project failure. But this story isn't getting any better. Studies have shown that in the year 2000, operating systems were about 25 million lines of code. In 2010, there were about 50 million lines of code. Electric cars today are 1 to 200 million lines of code, and Google has over 2 billion. In the next 25 years, systems could grow to trillions, and productivity would have to increase by thousands of times. Basically, traditional thinking has failed to deliver and to keep up. But what are our alternatives? Well, what about lean thinking? So what exactly is lean thinking? Well, it's a property consisting of being thin, slim, skinny, or extremely slender. It's a customer-driven product and service development process that delivers the maximum amount of business value in an economical way, free of excess waste, just enough processes, documentation, and tools that is adaptable to change and highly uncertain customer needs and market conditions. So what exactly are the lean values? Well, as we borrowed from the scaled agile framework, it consists of four major pillars: respect for people and culture, product and service development flow, innovation, and relentless and continuous improvement that drives business and customer and market value, all based on a foundation of servant leadership. So what exactly is unique about the lean thinking system? Well, in the traditional paradigm, it's scope that's fixed while cost and time are variable. In the agile paradigm, time and cost are fixed while scope is variable. However, in the lean system, it's batch size and inventory that are tightly controlled while capacity, time, and variance are variable, leading to extremely fast lead and cycle times. So the first principle of traditional thinking is large scope in the form of large contracts, statements of works, business requirements, architectures, large team size. But this study shows that the larger your scope and batch size, the longer your cycle time. So lean thinkers understand mathematically that the smaller your batch size or scope, the faster your cycle times or lead times. Another major principle of traditional thinking is increasing work in process in the form of contract scope, number of contracts, requirements, people, and especially processes and documents. But as this study shows, that the larger the WIP, the longer your cycle time gets. And actually your throughput speed and productivity actually decreases. There's actually a Goldilocks zone. You don't want to starve your projects with too little WIP, but you certainly don't want to overload them. Traditionalists instinctually increase utilization to tackle overscope projects and infinite complexity. That is, they increase utilization, which actually increases cycle time, defects, and wait time, while lean thinkers reduce utilization in order to improve quality and reduce wait times. Likewise, traditional thinkers try to deal with overscope projects and infinite complexity by simply filling people's capacity to maximum. But as this study by Smith shows, when you actually utilize 75% of an individual's capacity, that actually increases customer wait times. When you actually decrease an individual's capacity, that actually decreases customer wait times, lead times, and cycle times. Of course, traditional thinkers want to have their cake and eat it too. They want extremely large batches and full utilization of individuals, which leads to very poor quality and extremely long cycle time, whereas lean thinkers understand that the key to success is a Goldilocks zone of utilization, batch size, variation, and cycle time. Another major faux pas of traditional thinkers is the notion of multitasking. Multitasking actually increases wait time, increases project unpredictability, reduces throughput and productivity, and decreases business value. While lean thinkers understand that the key to decreasing wait times, increasing predictability, increasing throughput, and business value is through single tasking, not multitasking. Traditionally, overscope projects with infinite complexity lead to a dependence on multitasking, but multitasking actually decreases the time per task, project, requirement, architectural element, team, but that time isn't devoted to the next task, it's actually lost completely. So lean thinkers understand that the key to success is single tasking, not multitasking. As this 1997 Harvard study shows, when you use incremental development to develop tightly scoped MVPs, that actually increases quality, while overscoped MVPs actually decreases quality. Likewise, tightly scoped MVPs actually decreased feedback time, lead time, and cycle time in order to get that valuable market feedback in order to reduce uncertainty. As we said over and over again, traditional thinkers actually increase WIP. Too many contracts, too many requirements, too many designs, too many people, too many teams, which actually slows lead and cycle time. But lean thinkers understand that when you viciously, relentlessly limit WIP, that actually reduces lead cycle time, increases quality and customer satisfaction. While the traditional thinkers showed 20th century firms how to increase scope and complexity and project failure, and lean thinkers showed manufacturers how to reduce lead and cycle times in the 1990s, the scaled agile framework shows 21st century firms how to apply lean thinking at the portfolio level, at the architecture level, and how to use DevOps to pull thousands of microservices through the value stream each day. Using principles and practices of lean thinking, DevOps, and automated testing, 21st century firms can now decimate their lead and cycle times, increase quality and reliability to historic levels, and achieve productivity and return on investment necessary to tackle some of the most pressing global mission-critical systems over the next 25 years. Some of these principles are illustrated here. The larger your batches, the slower you go, the less integrations you do actually increases your defects, lowers quality, but the smaller the batch size, the more the testing, more integration actually increases quality, lowers lead and cycle times. Some of these same principles are illustrated by this lean thinking study at Hewlett-Packard. By applying these principles of lean thinking, DevOps, automated testing, Hewlett-Packard was actually able to decimate their development time, reduce their work in process, and return 80% of their resources to the innovation life cycle. By applying modern lean thinking principles in the 21st century's major .coms such as Google and Amazon are actually able to do amazing things. Google runs 150 million tests per day. Amazon does 136,000 system releases per day. Think of a DoD lifecycle that might do a release in about 10 years. Here's a nice study of lean thinking principles at Blackboard. Prior to 2010, Blackboard was integrating all their entire product line into one monolithic code base using enterprise architecture and traditional thinking. What happened is their productivity actually came to a screeching halt, as well as their ability to test and achieve quality goals. But once they decomposed their monolith first into service-oriented architectures, then into microservices using DevOps, they were actually able to increase their speed, decrease their lead and cycle times, increase their innovation and quality and customer satisfaction as well. Here's a nice study of lean thinking principles in the public sector as the Department of Homeland Security was able to apply lean thinking principles to reduce their work in process system complexity and their methodology complexity as well, decreasing the number of days to release from 180 to about 1 to 3 days, number of artifacts from 20 to 2, number of gate reviews from 10 to 1, all using DevOps, lean thinking, automated testing. Here's a nice study of lean thinking principles at Tesla and their all-electric cars. They have about 1 to 200 million lines of code. They use modern lean thinking principles, DevOps, automated testing to do 130 deployments today. But it's not one monolithic code base. It's just an ecosystem of family of modular microservices that can be updated very, very quickly, dispelling the myth that lean thinking principles cannot be applied to mission and safety critical systems. Once again, using lean thinking principles in the 21st century, Google is able to do 150 million tests per day. Netflix achieves 0 downtime. Amazon does 136,000 deployments per day. Target 80 deployments per week, and Bing does 20,000 tests per code check-in. But it's not just about speed, it's about increased discipline, good planning, good architecture, good design, and optimal WIP. It doesn't mean less discipline, it means great discipline. Here's a nice study by DevOps Research and Assessment Services. They show that the break-even point for modern lean thinking principles is about 7 days, actually. With $1 million in investments, you can achieve about $66 million in benefits, dispelling the myth that applying lean thinking principles in the 21st century takes decades. Traditional leaders created cultures of fear by ignoring people, being goal-oriented, using carrots and sticks, uh, being egotistical, talking at people, measuring individual performance, creating complex plans and infinitely long integrated master schedules. But lean leaders, as we've shown in the Safe House of Lean, they encourage continuous improvement. They praise people. They're humble. They forgive people for making mistakes. They listen. They don't talk, and they create a fun, enjoyable cultures that encourage people not to be fearful, but to continuously improve. Enterprises that apply lean thinking principles are 2 times more successful, 3 times more adaptable, twice as likely to achieve their strategic goals. Their customers are twice as satisfied. Their processes are 4 times more disciplined, and they're 5 times more likely to achieve their economic benefits. Lean businesses are more likely to outperform their traditional counterparts based on traditional measures such as earnings before interest, taxes, and depreciation, return on equity, return on assets, and return on investment. But more importantly, they have better revenue and better profit as well. Here's a nice study of lean thinking in the public sector. Costs are steadily decreasing. Schedule lengths are steadily decreasing. Agile maturity is steadily increasing. But as projects are moving so fast, it's putting a stress on teamwork, trust, and relationships that are vital to lean and agile success. Here's a nice study on lean business performance from Arthur D. Little out of Frankfurt, Germany, showing that when you just apply basic lean principles from the manufacturing era, you're more likely not to achieve the benefits that you would unless you apply modern principles like the scaled agile framework, DevOps, automation, testing, where you're sure to achieve the benefits and the promises of lean. Remember what General Casey said at the beginning of this briefing: clarity and simplicity are the antidotes to complexity and uncertainty. So the 5 keys to lean success are, applying lean and agile principles, not traditional thinking, downsizing your portfolio, simplifying your systems and their architectures, modularizing your interfaces, using microservices, end-to-end automation, and most important, lean and agile leadership. Here's another way of saying the same thing. Limit your work in process. Involve your customers early. De-scope your complexity by an order of magnitude. Implement each component in small cross-functional teams. Incrementally test each component as you develop it. And when you do this, you can reduce your cost, your risk, your waste while improving quality, lead and cycle times, customer satisfaction, and business value. Let's close with a quote by Albert Einstein on lean thinking. He said, "Any intelligent fool can make things bigger and more complex. However," he said, "it takes a touch of genius and a lot of courage to move in the opposite direction." That is the direction of lean thinking and lean leadership. Here are some great and readable resources for understanding, analyzing, and applying lean thinking principles. Supply Chain Science by Wallace Hopp, Factory Physics by Wallace Hopp and Mark Spearman, The Principles of Product Development Flow by Don Reinertsen. One of my favorites, Factory Physics for Managers by Edward Pound, and this is a great one too, Flexible Product Development by Preston Smith. Thank you for listening to this video on lean thinking principles and practices. Please feel free to visit my website, davidfrico.com, to get this briefing, this video, and other white papers on how to apply lean thinking principles to complex systems. Thank you very much.